The accusation landed like a punch to the gut. Marjorie Phillips sat frozen in the marble-floored lobby, her hands clutching her purse so tightly the leather creased. Her widowed life had been quiet, measured, predictable. Grocery runs, Sunday calls to her daughter, quiet evenings with her knitting. Until today. "Ma'am, we're going to need to flag this transaction," the teller had said, voice polite but rigid. "It appears suspicious." Marjorie blinked. Suspicious? The word echoed in her head, bouncing off the polished walls, leaving her heart thumping in a rhythm that was entirely new. I don't understand," she whispered. "You need to verify your identity," the teller added. "And until then, we can't process your withdrawal." Her withdrawal, her life savings, her independence. Serena Williams was in Los Angeles, glancing at her phone between training sets. When the message arrived, her eyes narrowed. Elderly widow flagged for fraud. Needs compliance review. Urgent. She felt that familiar surge, not adrenaline from the court, not heat from the gym, but a different fire. Justice, tempered with precision. The kind that doesn't need applause. Serena had seen this pattern before. Systems moving faster than people. Machines deciding over humanity. A flag raised before a voice was heard. A procedure executed before common sense had a chance to step in. She called the bank. "Good afternoon," said a calm corporate voice. "Serena Williams," she said evenly. "I need access to compliance footage regarding Marjorie Phillips' account. Immediately. And I need the full timeline of her interaction with your teller." There was a pause. Then, the standard corporate phrasing. "I'm afraid we cannot release that information without proper authorization." Serena didn't interrupt. She let the weight of her presence speak. "No threats. Just accountability. I'm requesting it as a third-party advocate," she said. "Not for exposure, but for verification. This is a matter of procedural integrity." The line went silent for a moment. Then, finally, "We'll escalate your request." Back at the branch, Marjorie was still seated, trembling slightly. She had been asked to provide multiple forms of ID, answer questions she had answered dozens of times over the years, and recount the deposits she had made with painstaking accuracy. Her eyes scanned the lobby. Other customers whispered among themselves, avoiding looking directly at her. Even the teller seemed conflicted, shuffling paperwork nervously. Marjorie's phone buzzed. A message from her daughter. "I'm coming, Mom. Hang in there." She exhaled slowly. And then, the door opened, cutting through the murmurs like a drumbeat. Serena Williams entered. Not flashy, no entourage, just her. A calm authority that made the room feel smaller and larger at the same time. "Miss Phillips?" Serena asked softly. Marjorie looked up. Recognition flashed in her eyes, though she wasn't sure why. "I'm here to help," Serena said. "Can we go over what happened?" They moved to a quiet corner of the branch. Serena didn't pull out her phone right away. She didn't take notes. She simply listened. Marjorie recounted the interaction. Every detail. The teller's words, the hesitation, the form requesting her deceased husband's information again, the red flag that seemed to hang over her head like a judgment. Serena nodded, absorbing every word. "Do you have the timestamps?" Serena asked. Marjorie shook her head. "I only know when I got the message on my phone about the account hold." "That's fine," Serena said. "We'll get them." Then she called the bank's corporate compliance department directly. "Yes," she said when someone answered. "I'm requesting all footage and account logs for Marjorie Phillips from today's interaction, from arrival to departure. Every camera angle, every screen interaction, every keystroke logged. Compliance needs verification." There was silence on the other end. "Ms. Williams," the voice began carefully. "This is highly unusual." "Highly unusual," Serena repeated evenly, "is not a reason to ignore the process. I want the footage. I want the logs. And I want a review of the teller's actions relative to protocol. Time is of the essence." By the time the compliance officer pulled up the first segment, Serena was already reviewing. Her eyes scanned every frame. The teller's posture, the hesitation before marking the red flag, the way Marjorie's hands shook as she signed forms she didn't understand. The system had done exactly what it was designed to do, flag anomaly. But it hadn't accounted for nuance, for decades of consistent account behavior, for the human story behind the numbers. Serena made notes. Not to accuse, not to shame, to verify, to reconstruct, to ensure procedure had been followed correctly. And then she noticed it. A delay in verification. A skipped step. A misread signature. A piece of data flagged unnecessarily because of an automated rule. This is what we call overreach, Serena said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. She watched the teller's interaction again. The hesitancy, the momentary glance at the supervisor. A silent uncertainty that the system couldn't capture, but humans could. This is correctable, Serena said. Marjorie sat across from her, still trembling. Serena reached out and placed a hand over hers. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. But they accused me, Marjorie whispered. And they can fix it, Serena replied. We'll make sure your account is verified properly. Every step, every timestamp, every policy followed as it should have been. Marjorie blinked, overwhelmed, relief mixed with disbelief. Serena smiled softly. That's why I requested the footage. Because integrity matters more than automation. They went through the footage frame by frame. Every action validated. Every skipped protocol identified. Every unnecessary flag corrected. By the time they were done, a full compliance report had been drafted. The teller, who had been quiet through the entire process, watched silently. Serena didn't confront him aggressively. She didn't need to. Her presence and meticulous review had already conveyed the lesson. Systems are tools, she said, addressing both him and the supervisor, not arbiters of judgment. Remember that next time. The room felt lighter. Polished marble, fluorescent lights, the hum of air conditioning. All quiet now, in a way that made accountability feel almost tactile. Marjorie's account was restored fully. No holds. No pending flags. The report included a recommendation, additional training, mandatory human review for elder accounts, and verification before any automated flag could result in action. She held Serena's hand, tears in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Serena squeezed her hand back. You didn't need saving. You needed fairness. And now, the system sees that. The lobby had returned to normal, but a subtle shift lingered. Not just in policy, not just in procedure, but in the energy of the place itself. People noticed how carefully interactions were conducted. Supervisors paused before marking flags. Tellers looked at customers' hands instead of just the screen. And somewhere deep in the compliance server logs, the footage of that day was marked, timestamped, and filed with a note. Human review verified. Elder protocol corrected. Marjorie stepped out of the branch, the weight of the day finally lifting from her shoulders. The sunlight hit her face like a warm acknowledgement, a quiet contrast to the fluorescent hum she'd been trapped under for hours. Every step down the sidewalk felt deliberate, measured, reclaimed. She adjusted her scarf, tucked her purse closer, and breathed in the city air, not rushed, not chaotic, just hers again. Serena walked beside her, casual but purposeful, sneakers on concrete, the faint sound of her voice carrying over the soft chatter of passers-by. Systems like this, Serena said, they're designed to protect people. But sometimes they forget the people they protect are human. Marjorie nodded slowly. I felt invisible today, as if all those years, none of it mattered. Not invisible, Serena replied, voice calm but firm. Misunderstood. Misread. That's different. And today, we corrected it. They paused at a street corner. Traffic rolled past, horns muted by distance. Serena's phone buzzed, an alert from the compliance team confirming that all procedural corrections had been logged and verified. Everything's marked, Serena said, showing Marjorie the screen. Elder protocol corrected. Manual verification added. Footage reviewed. Recommendations implemented. Marjorie leaned closer. That's a lot of words. But what does it mean? It means, Serena said, eyes steady, that the system won't erase you again. Not without someone seeing you first. Back inside the branch, the teller wiped his hands on his apron, a quiet tension lingering even after the day's chaos had ended. He glanced at the security monitor, the footage of Marjorie's transaction frozen, reviewed, verified, and annotated. He hadn't been reprimanded. He hadn't been shamed. He simply realized that precision alone wasn't enough. Politeness wasn't enough. The human behind the account, their story, their routine, their decades of trust, mattered more than the algorithm's binary flags. The branch manager walked past him and nodded subtly. No words needed. The lesson had been absorbed, carried quietly into each subsequent interaction. That evening, Marjorie returned home, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The house smelled like lavender, the kettle ready for tea. She set her purse on the counter and sank into her favorite chair. Her hands shook slightly, from relief, fatigue, and an unfamiliar surge of empowerment. She pulled out her phone and sent a short text to her daughter. "Everything is okay. The bank reviewed everything. I feel seen." Her daughter replied instantly, "Mom, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you." Marjorie smiled, folding her hands over her lap. She had faced bureaucracy, automation, and assumption, and she had not just survived, she had been heard. Across town, Serena sat in her quiet office, framed by city lights and soft shadows. She leaned back in her chair, running a hand over her notebook filled with observations, timelines, and compliance logs. Every detail had been reviewed, every anomaly accounted for. She didn't smile, not because she was satisfied, not because she was done, but because the work had a rhythm now, methodical, deliberate, human. She closed the notebook slowly, letting the weight of the day settle into the calm of accomplishment. The notification came in, a confirmation from the bank that the policy revisions had been implemented system-wide. Every branch, every teller, every flagged transaction over the age of 75 would now require human oversight. Footage reviewed, logs checked, accountability embedded. Serena exhaled. The following week, Marjorie returned to the bank, this time with no tension in her step. She noticed small but significant changes. Tellers paused before marking flags. Supervisors were visible near workstations, actively monitoring procedures. Signage reminded staff to consider human context first. The lobby felt calmer, intentional, respectful. She smiled faintly to herself. A small victory, but a meaningful one. One of the tellers, the same one who had hesitated before, offered her a genuine smile. "Good to see you again, Mrs. Phillips," he said softly. Marjorie nodded. "Thank you for being careful." The teller looked down, then back up. "I will be. I've learned today that procedure is important, but humanity is essential." Serena checked in later via a brief call. "Everything okay?" Marjorie laughed lightly, a sound more like release than amusement. "Yes, they're watching now, but in a better way." Serena's tone softened. "And if they forget again?" Marjorie's eyes sparkled faintly. "Then I know who to call." Serena chuckled. "Good. That's the right answer." They ended the call with a quiet understanding. Not power, not spectacle, just acknowledgement. In the months that followed, the bank documented a new training program, human oversight in elder transactions. Supervisors conducted workshops. Tellers learned to pause, verify, and ask. The system still flagged anomalies, but now those flags required human verification before action. Marjorie occasionally visited the branch for routine transactions, watching the rhythm of staff movement, the care with which people checked accounts, and the way technology had been balanced with human judgment. She realized something profound. Systems can always be refined, but trust is cultivated through visibility, accountability, and respect. And now, in this small corner of her life, she felt all three. On a quiet afternoon, Serena left the branch after another compliance check. She didn't need recognition. She didn't need thanks. The work had been done. The footage reviewed. Policy corrected. Humanity restored. She glanced back once at the lobby, at Marjorie sitting calmly, sipping tea. The room was still, vibrant in its quiet integrity. Serena's steps carried her out into the sunlight. The city buzzed around her, algorithms whirring unseen, people moving past without noticing the small ripple she had caused. But that ripple was enough. Because sometimes, making the system pause, making someone question, making a voice be heard, that's how change begins. And the vibe of accountability, humanity, and quiet vigilance lingered in the space long after the cameras were off, long after the files were archived, and long after the red flags had disappeared. Marjorie Phillips had her life, her savings, and most importantly, her dignity. And Serena Williams? She had ensured that no algorithm would ever forget it again.